Have you ever noticed around Christmas and New Year's, you might lose track of the day? You might think, what day is it? Or you might ask others, what day is it? Have you ever wondered why? If you're following along, you ought to remember the brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly running models of the outside world. And the central nervous system, the brain and spine, is designed to move the living organism. And the brain is a metabolic bank accountant. It's moving the living organism while allocating energy across the brain and body, using as little effort as possible. The nervous system doesn't like to work. It just wants to respond. So what is that about? It's trying to conserve energy, yes. And you ought to remember about the biological calculators, these internal calculators that to calculate this metabolic bank, to distribute out the metabolic energy. A big area of this, if you're following along, we're going to be covering this quite extensively, is a subcortical area. It's a pathway called the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia is 5 subcortical areas of the brain, has inputs, relays, and outputs. The inputs are the caudate nucleus and the putamen. This is receiving instructions, inputs, signals from the cortex and the midbrain and sensory motor areas. This is forming learning and then habits. The goal of the living organism in the nervous system is to build habits. Now, the basal ganglia is our go, no-go area. 2 opposing forces. We're either going or not going. Activation versus inactivation. The basal ganglia is where motivation meets movements. Now, you might want to define motivation here, but you're wrong. You don't define motivation. The living organism does, based off of the nervous system. The nervous system defines your motivation. Remember, it just wants to respond. So it's motivated to use as little effort as possible and conserve energy. So it's going to do which action allows it to accomplish that. Now, with these internal calculators, it is constantly updating in real time. It's constantly receiving information in the nervous system based off of the environment. Now, this basal ganglia, we move from learning new tasks, and then it shifts it down into the habit formation. This is the part where autism and why there's so much scheduling that's inflexible. Now, as you learn about learning to habit formation, the living organism, based off of the central nervous system here, loves habits. The goal is to take everything, all of these motor actions and these thought processes and everything accounting for moving the living organism. It wants it to be a habit. Now, if you just want to think about whenever you were young and learning to walk, it took more effort, and now you can just walk. You don't even have to think about it. This is an accomplishment of the living organism. Anytime you learn something, it's going to have some frustration and agitation behind it. That's because the nervous system doesn't know how to do it, and it's using more effort than expected. Now, with the internal calculators, expectation is huge. And now, whenever you know that something is not going to your expectation, something is unpredictable, it's a little bit different than going through your normal routine. Now we're thinking about autism. Everybody knows that autism is insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to schedules. You know why now. The outside world is very unpredictable. And we just want to predict. That's the goal of the brain, is prediction. That way, the living organism knows. Now, with the habits and these schedules around like the holidays and so forth, everything is thrown off. And the living organism, your central nervous system is like, what is happening here? This is different. It's not that complicated. If you understand that the central nervous system does not want to work, it just wants to respond. And this is why change is hard. You can apply this to anything in your life. Anytime you want to learn something new, either a learning bout, maybe you want to learn quantum physics. This is going to be hard at first. Or you want to learn a motor movement, a physical bout. You want to run a 6.5 minute mile. That's going to be hard at first if you're not trained to do it. Anytime learning is involved, the central nervous system says, this is work. It doesn't like that. Now you know about the scheduling and around the holidays or any time that is, maybe you're on vacation. You take a week's vacation and by Tuesday, Wednesday, what day is it? This stuff isn't that complicated. Soon we will cover this in quite detail with the basal ganglia and autism regarding different habit formation and motor movements and even speech and language.